Helena found performing in front of strangers scarier than she had ever imagined, and she feared that her stage debut might be a flop. But a local BBC casting agent fell in love with her 19th century looks and was convinced otherwise. In December of 1983, 17-year-old Helena appeared in the television drama A Pattern of Roses, playing Nettie, the privileged niece of a vicar who takes advantage of a commoner's love.
Mr. Pettigrew is going to give me a hound walk. Do you know what that means? To look after, until it's old enough to join the pack. Mr. Pettigrew says I can go and fetch her tomorrow. So I'll have a dog of my very own to go hunting with. Oh, Tom, we could have some splendid walks with her. Do you have to work all the time?
Yes.
Oh.
And there's Sundays.
Uncle wouldn't let me enjoy myself on a Sunday. But there's hours lessons. Oh, Tom, we could go...
Although Helena was on screen for less than 10 minutes, her first role caught the attention of one of England's most prominent agents.
I turned the television on and there was a very sweet little children's film called A Pattern of Roses. I suddenly saw this girl who had a very small part, who was exquisitely beautiful. And I noticed that it was cast by a friend of mine. She said, oh, it's a girl called Helena Bonham Carter. She's at Westminster School, and I think she wants to be an actress.
Only weeks later, Helena signed up with Conway. Although with just one credit to her name and little formal training, she continued to prepare for her college entrance exams. But that year, she was caught completely unprepared when theatre director Trevor Nunn called her to try out for the lead in his film, Lady Jane. Helena felt out of her league. She was preoccupied with studying and had no idea what to expect from a film audition. The director persisted, and after weeks of putting him off, Helena finally gave in. She showed up for the reading in jeans, a sweatshirt and trainers. But Nunn sensed her potential and offered her the title role.
She just had a wonderful quality about her. I mean, there was something, that rare word, charisma.
The 17-year-old decided to buck tradition and postpone her education to star in her first feature film.
I was going to go back to school. I was going to try and get to university, and suddenly I was taken off on a different course. But it was something that I definitely wanted to do, and I thought it was fantastic.
A dream was about to come true. But Helena Bonham Carter would soon discover that the reality of being a professional actress was not all she had imagined. In 1985, 17-year-old Helena Bonham Carter began production on the 16th century love story Lady Jane, opposite Cary Elwes and such classically trained stage actors as Patrick Stewart, John Wood and Michael Hordern. Helena played the tragic Lady Jane Grey, a teenage bride manipulated by scheming courtiers following the death of Edward VI.
Majesty will try the crown?
This isn't mine.
It is, Your Grace.
It is not my right.
Your Grace will want to see it fits.
I can't.
And if it suits Your Majesty.
And so it does.
Helena seemed perfectly cast as the doomed queen. But the actress felt inadequate among the experienced cast and struggled through her first major role.
I think Lady Jane was a challenge, and she was terribly young then. She was surrounded by extremely experienced, mostly stage actors, and a lot of Royal Shakespeare Company actors who had all worked with Trevor Nunn.
It was completely bewildering. I mean, I didn't realise with ignorance there's a huge sort of fearlessness that comes, and I thought I knew what I was doing, but I didn't.
Afraid of exposing her insecurities, Bonham Carter kept everyone at arm's length. She avoided socialising with her fellow actors and soon earned a reputation for being unapproachable and cold.
When you're 18 and it's your first movie, you don't really know what you're doing, I don't think. You're just trying to get on with it.
Helena's portrayal of Lady Jane was a success, although some critics dismissed the aristocratic beauty as a dilettante blessed with beginner's luck.
I think there's a great prejudice in England that you've got to have gone through the rep system for 25 years and then the RSC for another 15, but it's just that small bunch of naysayers saying, well, you know, you should have done this or you should have done that. I just think that whether they have been to drama school or whatever, you either believe somebody or not.
During the 1980s, period dramas like Chariots of Fire and Heat and Dust revitalised British cinema, and the producing and directing team of Ishmael Merchant and James Ivory had become synonymous with the trend. They worked with Greta Scacchi, Vanessa Redgrave and Isabella Gianni. And that year, they were under pressure to cast an actress of the same calibre in the lead in their latest screen venture. But when the filmmakers saw a photo of Helena Bonham Carter, they were convinced she was their perfect turn-of-the-century heroine. Once again, Helena went off to an audition, petrified that she was in over her head and wanted only for her looks.
The meeting was in our apartment in London. She sort of slouched on the sofa with her feet out in front of her and just kind of sat there with a frown, and her eyebrows knit like this, like the sort of privileged teenager she was at that time, and didn't say much, but there was something immediately that I liked about her.
Despite her reservations, Helena landed the role of a lifetime, playing Lucy Honeychurch, an uptight bride-to-be in Merchant Ivory's adaptation of E.M. Forster's Victorian novel, A Room with a View. That summer, she headed to Italy to star opposite Maggie Smith, Judi Dench, Denham Elliott, Daniel Day-Lewis and Julian Sands.
I remember the day before we were due to start filming, Jim Ivory saying, you know, there's a lot of pressure for us to pull the plug on the whole film unless we took this sort of mainstream casting. But she made an indelible impression.
Miss Emerson, you know how silly people are. Gossiping. Ladies especially, I'm afraid. You understand what I mean?
No.
I mean, would you not mention it to anyone? My foolish behaviour.
Appearing in almost every scene in the film, Helena was overwhelmed by the intense scrutiny on the set, as the press, her co-stars and even the director waited to see if she could rise to the occasion.
You worry because the talent hasn't really been demonstrated. It's just a hunch that she'd be good. She was very unsure of herself at first. It took her about 3 weeks to really kind of get into the part.
There were certainly strong personalities around, and not everybody was as easily sympathetic to Helena as she might have deserved. And I think she showed great sort of poise in character.
You love George. You love the boy body and soul, as he loves you.
But of course I do. What did you all think?
Then...
No, Mother's calling. I've got to go. They trust me.
Why should they? When you deceived everyone, including yourself.
It was on A Room with a View. I suddenly thought, having tried to act, I realised very quickly that I had a lot to learn. And then I thought, you know, doing A Room with a View in the middle of Florence, I felt completely at sea and in my own little muddle and totally confused and really sort of like didn't really know what I was doing. I was really conscious of not knowing what I was doing.
She didn't have a lot of experience, but that was appropriate. If she'd had a lot of experience, she'd have been too old and too mature and too canny for the role. Her freshness and her openness and her interior quality was so perfect for Lucy, and bewitchingly so.
A Room with a View was released in March of 1986 and quickly surpassed Merchant Ivory's wildest expectations. The independent art house film became an international hit and made Helena Bonham Carter a celebrity overnight. Although most reviewers embraced the exciting new star, some English critics focused on the unschooled novice's loose vowels, subtle errors in accent,